The Hermetic Science of Transformation by Giuliano Kremmerz. An appeal to aspirants unto the light. Naught did I know. I entered and beheld the secret things. Papyrus of New, Canto 1:16, 15th century before Christ. While empirical science, through its progressive mastery of nature's secrets, has achieved significant advancement over the past half-century, the comprehension of the divine virtues of the human soul has, by contrast, remained entirely stagnant. Today, precisely as in times past, and indeed as has ever been the case under the sun, there exist, in the view of ordinary seekers of the mysteries of the future, only two categories of individuals: the mystics and the pseudo-scholars who profess theories that remain beyond the reach of the common intellect. The mystics are legion, ranging from the religious zeal of those who claim communion with God, the saints, prophets, and archangels, to those who evoke the spirits of the deceased. The pseudo-physicians are those who, employing the methodology of ordinary scientific experimentation, attempt to speak with a semblance of authority regarding that which everyone possesses yet none can explain, namely, the soul within the human creature, rich in virtues and unfathomable mysteries. The mystics speak by way of psychic ecstasy, thereby subjecting themselves to the scrutiny of incredulous psychiatrists, themselves the mystics of a nascent science, who deem them fit for asylum confinement and suitable subjects for experiments designed for a public that never questions the assertions of those regarded as the luminaries of officially recognized science. Through their semantic maneuvers, magnetism has been rebranded as hypnotism. The human mind, namely our faculties of thought and volition, has been designated the psyche, and under this appellation has become an official subject of clinical experimentation. Yet how many among them, possessing a conscience, would not confess that, in this struggle to master the unknown arcana, they are perpetually hoping for, yet never arriving at, any definitive conclusions? Nevertheless, the enigma of the soul remains that which commands the profoundest interest of the populace. Every individual yearns to comprehend, and ardently longs for some knowledge of, the destiny of man following his demise. The mystery of death constitutes the threshold at which the investigation of human science, as conceived in clinics and academies, reaches its limit. Yet it is also the very threshold that Hermetic philosophy must adopt as its point of departure to ascertain, if possible, the degree of subtlety with which the substance of the thinking ego may withdraw itself from the necessity of bodily functions. If the skeleton remains robust, if the flesh is yet youthful, the cells animate, and the vascular tissue pliable, what necessity is there to pass through the grave to achieve regeneration? You, O death, are the resolution of the spiritual enigma within living man and within the obscure recesses of his unknown soul. The initiate must conquer death and transcend the bondage of this inexorable law. The initiate faces solely the challenge of the continuity of consciousness, the crossing of the river of forgetfulness, Lethe, thereby sustaining uninterrupted his dream of integration with divine powers. Empirical science is incapable of addressing this problem, and, in the absence of scientifically validated proof, contentedly denies any survival of the soul or of man's psychic individuality. Thus, the portal to religion and mysticism is flung open. Because religion and mysticism offer that which academic science cannot provide, the hope of a liberated existence within a realm of superhuman justice and ideal liberty, it is desirable that a single word should unveil the truth. Yet the problem of the hereafter shall be resolved only by those capable of attaining self-knowledge, that is to say, of the structure, anatomy, and chemistry of their own souls. I do not intend to refer here to the investigations of those who, in their volumes and other treatises, have produced prolix psychological works purporting to examine our predominant instincts, our moral virtues, and the methods of their cultivation. These investigations constitute merely preliminary inquiries, and this entire multitude of writers does not truly aim to analyze the problem of the soul in itself, but rather to examine it solely in relation to the society in which man resides, and to the so-called morality established by the community of the living, regarded as a prerequisite for social success. Science, from astronomy to chemistry, has bestowed upon us a profound benefit. The repudiation of all parochial concepts of a universal deity fashioned in the image and likeness of man, and consequently of the statues, images, and symbols embedded in popular tradition. The infinite universe, inaccessible to any means of scientific inquiry, cannot be represented, even symbolically, as a colossal man, since man is a product of the earth, and the earth is but an infinitesimal fragment of the infinite cosmos. The sole scientific conception of God is this: the law that governs the cosmos in perfect equilibrium. This law is infinite, constant, and eternally immutable. Upon the earth, within intelligent thought, beyond terrestrial orbit, in the gravitation of visible worlds, and in the moral alignment of souls gathered in society. This law is perfect because it permits no violation whatsoever. Thus, a miracle that would contravene this law is impossible, appearing feasible only if it is the consequence of the law itself, operating under principles as yet unknown to humanity. This law is intelligent because it bestows and withdraws in accordance with merit. It grants and deprives with a justice that transcends human capability. For us, there exists only the universe, governed by a single inexorable law, by an order from which nothing can be detracted. Should you wish to personify this intelligent and inexorable law in human form, I entreat you not to elevate such an idol as the supreme deity. The cosmos is too vast to be encapsulated in a single word or a single human image. When the ancient patriarchs of biblical narrative spoke of the inexorable figure of Yahweh, whose nature verged on cruelty yet was never capricious, they were, in truth, referring to this universal law that directs and creates all that exists, whose soul is the essence of being, namely, the immutable primary substance and its secondary variable manifestations. This immutable law is likewise understood as the manifestation of the universal, primordial, intelligent essence, which emanates from the forms of all things, both visible and invisible. The ancient priesthood of classical initiatory religions never employed definitive forms to represent the primordial principle or the intelligent substance. Rather, they invariably utilized manifold plastic representations to depict distinct phases of the creative act, or more precisely, the incarnation of the universal deity. The loftiest conception that a zoologist, a physiologist, or a botanist can form of God is to recognize nature as the sole divinity open to human discourse and inquiry. Indeed, all the symbols and hieroglyphs of the ancient sages declare this. He possesses two aspects: the visible, which represents his manifestation in the physical realm, namely, in the nature of our modern materialistic philosophies, and the invisible, which represents the spirit of nature, that is, intelligence, the law governing every natural manifestation. A force, a vast soul that causes the tree to blossom, gleams through the water, tempers the metal, and illuminates the sun. The invisible deity of the universe, whose very manifestations constitute the positive proof of his existence, is the intelligence governing all phenomena that affect our senses. This universal intelligence, through the wise constancy of its manifestations, serves as the regulating law of universal nature. The acquisition of powers is nothing other than the right to attain them through this law. An athlete who trains indefatigably throughout the day in order to lift great weights possesses a right of priority over those of a more indolent disposition. A chemist who applies himself diligently to the investigation of natural bodies possesses a right of priority over all those who have never, in the course of their lives, pondered the constitution of the atmosphere. No matter the exertion of physical force, you shall find yourself unable to bend metals. Yet a skilled smith, though inferior to you in bodily strength, can fashion them at will. This constitutes the right of power, a conquest within the law rather than outside the universal law. Whosoever fails to comprehend this is merely deluded, for he conceives of power divorced from conquest. Is this concept, then, which is rigorously scientific and philosophical, truly a modern conquest? None have devoted themselves to the profound study of the ancient sacerdotal sciences save through the symbols and hieroglyphics by which their secular secrets were transmitted to us, and the priesthoods of the Assyro-Babylonian and Egyptian religions possessed no conception of God other than as a law. The secret of the priests, their supreme secret, was the knowledge of the laws governing the human soul, through which they succeeded in acquiring marvelous powers that appeared legendary, yet were entirely real. Telepathy, experiments in levitation, the fortuitous divination of future events through dreams, and premonitory signs of impending occurrences are phenomena that already capture the attention of established science, yet they do so inconclusively. For science examines the phenomenon only as it arises, much like a primitive people's knowledge of solar or lunar eclipses. They observe the obscuration of the luminary without explaining it. Conversely, in the case of intelligent human consciousness, it is imperative first to explain the phenomenon, and second, to reproduce it at will. For this knowledge of the soul to become truly and strictly scientific, it is necessary to investigate the laws regulating it and the process by which it engenders these phenomena. The subjective method of conscious inquiry into one's own ego, which suffices to develop its intensity and reap its fruits, invariably represents the preferable path for those who ardently desire awareness, knowledge, and progression. The objective of this integration is man. Never lose sight of that. Each of your experiments must be performed upon man, not upon just any man, but upon yourself. Furthermore, you must remain conscious of every step forward, knowing precisely the most efficacious means of inducing a state of consciousness that transcends ordinary experience. There exists a secret world that men merely glimpse, a world whose existence they suspect, whose manifestations surprise them, but for which they cannot account. To study it, we must first study independently the secret man hidden within us, and second, examine the secret, invisible world of souls, of the deceased, of divinities, and of those entities that have never been human and dwell in another state of existence. The secret world must encompass the entirety of the sacred science of the ancient priests, the very science that transforms man into a living God. The secret world shall be a work of gnosis designed to reconstruct the mysterious science of the Magi, dedicated to the aspirants of the light, that is, to those who, temperate in their passions, pure of any malevolent intent, and possessing both a strong will and the determination to do good, devote themselves to study and observation in order to succeed. The elementary principles, which serve to rectify erroneous or poorly understood concepts, shall be expounded in a manner accessible to all. As for the remainder, I shall speak in such a way as to reserve this knowledge solely for that mental and moral aristocracy possessing the right to ascend. I promise and maintain only this, that I shall conceal nothing, and the great arcanum shall be revealed to you, so that candidates for the supreme priesthood may find the confirmation of their aspirations. Verbose philosophers and scientists of narrow inquiry must yield to a rational school of culture that will guide the masses, for it marks the boundary where the philosopher must unite with the scientist to advance toward the conquest of truth for the welfare of humanity. To be explicit, this curriculum of facts consists in the effort to perfect ourselves and others in the knowledge of the individuality latent within us, applying these achievements to practical life for the benefit of the less fortunate, and combating evil in whatever guise of ignorance or authoritarianism it assumes. The initiatory methods of the priesthood prepared and shaped the etheric human nuclei, the self-formation of an intelligent humanity. Our school undertakes this endeavor today. The integration of these powers is subordinated to that state of consciousness which aspires to the potency of a genuine and profound knowledge. While religions proclaim that these attributes and supernatural powers proceed from the grace bestowed by an unknown God, our school scientifically investigates the laws governing such phenomena, laws well known to certain esoteric priesthoods, the very founders of religions. It fosters the latent powers of the living organism by cultivating, through traditional practices, self-discipline in the study of psychophysical forces and the development of the integrated individual, whilst effectively directing their hermetic therapeutic application toward the mitigation of human suffering. Consequently, it constitutes a school of practical philosophy whose disciples pursue but a single aim: to contribute to the advancement of human civilization, as conceived in its physical form, by uniting, among its factors of progress, the elements of the potentiality of the soul and the spirit in all mankind. Its hermetic mission must be waged against ignorance and superstition for the benefit of the masses, who are to be redeemed by means of the science of man. It is, therefore, an altar erected to human science and opposed to ignorance. It works humbly and in obscurity for the common good, whilst proclaiming publicly and gloriously everywhere that human science will, in time, bring complete order to human material, establish peace among the nations of the world, and conquer both the fear and the sting of death. To atheists, you shall declare that man is the sovereign of humanity and that human wisdom is the queen of the universe. To believers, you shall explain that God manifests himself in his creations, even as a tree reveals itself through its fruit. You shall teach all men that hermetic perfection is a wondrous remedy, which the gods and sublime deities of Olympus brought to earth in human guise, among suffering and ferocious men, to heal their weeping wounds and restore them to peace. That Mercury distills the essence of blooming roses, and that Eros bestows it upon mortals should radiant Venus smile. Giuliano Kremmerz. To the Disciples of the Great Art. Nice, June 1, 1917. With a profound sense of bitterness, after approximately 20 years, I pen these few introductory words to this edition of Elements of Natural and Divine Magic, which my esteemed friends, the publishers, have resolved to make available to the companions and disciples of the great art. In this work, in the year 1897, I began to write of these antiquated matters, which concern no one, during an era in which it was so simple to publish a volume that found no readers. And here again, 2 decades later, under the sign of Cassandra, I write without expectation of being believed. I did not publish The Secret World to declare myself a magician, for one renounces acting to one's own advantage when one begins to address the masses. At that time, my desire was to inaugurate a new epoch in Italy within the intellectual life of the finest minds who might read my work, by severing them from the hollow rhetoric of Christian or Buddhist mysticism, which has yielded the bloody consequences of the present day, and to disillusion them with spiritualist empiricism and the folly of communing with the deceased. I wished for man to comprehend those occult or mysterious powers that are inherent to living beings, and which constitute the unconscious origin of all the mystical fabrications that have afflicted humanity for centuries. My objective was to demonstrate that between scientific materialism and otherworldly mysticism lies an unexplored realm, one that reconciles the uncompromisingly exclusive nature of these polar extremes. Within this intermediate state between life and death resides the science of man, historically designated as mag, which reveals the latent and formidable resources of human nature. I sought to test, on a grand scale, the therapeutic application of these forces to medicine, understood in its purest sense as the art of healing and alleviating suffering. Furthermore, may God forgive my audacity, I aspired to erect a monument to Italian Pythagoreanism, the progenitor of subsequent Templarism, and to initiate a modest intellectual and moral reform, cultivating virtue in its practical application to social life. I had, however, forgotten the calendar. I believed humanity to be several centuries more advanced. Yet, in 20 years, I have obtained only preliminary trials and tentative results. Nothing of substance has emerged, save perhaps for the myriad tribulations I have brought upon myself by my own hand. Consequently, my brief introductory remarks may now be distilled to these. May the reader, in perusing this volume, understand that my aim was not to present researchers with the sole path of attainment, but rather a means of intuiting the existence of a secret, a physical arcanum known to very few in the past, and to even fewer today. Although this secret is of such a nature as to render a man more powerful than any demigod, no one can be found to sell it, and it apparently fails to bestow happiness upon its possessor. The mere intuition of this secret's existence suffices to render ludicrous those mystical fabrications that have long subjugated humanity to pontiffs and divine rights, thereby engendering a formalized and mendacious morality that lies at the root of our contemporary afflictions. Once the old world is liberated from its biblical and Buddhist inheritances, and when the forms and substance of all conventionalism have dissolved, humanity, steering clear of both scientific materialism and those dogmatic religions that stifle human initiative, will learn to conceive the immanent divinity of the universe as a benevolent law of liberty operating within an equilibrium of justice that no human code could ever hope to sanction. Time shall be the principal agent in this progress, through which all enigmas will eventually be resolved. Volta discovered electricity, yet he did not invent it. For countless millennia, electricity existed, unmapped, inaccessible, and its phenomena entirely misunderstood. The future discoverer of this angelic arcanum of living man will neither establish limited joint stock corporations nor commercialize his discovery. He shall be a Christ King who will bring peace to men of good will. But for that transition, it demands time, the great architect of all miracles, so that the ideal may crystallize into reality. Before this discoverer may place the legendary crown of Solomon upon his brow, the masses must endure the rigorous crucible of life across the centuries to come. One may discount Cassandra now, but her prophecies will be vindicated hereafter. Do not infer that, after 2 decades, I tolerate any ambiguity. Indeed, I shall go further and assert, regard initiations precisely for what they are. The 2 or 3 societies of researchers reputed to possess this arcanum offer the neophyte nothing more than a mere initiation. To initiate signifies to begin. Initium, beginning. None can bestow the consummation, for the arcanum is of such a nature that the closer one approaches it, the less one is capable of articulating it. It may be transmitted within the bounds of certain faculties, but never imparted in its entirety. And of what utility in any case is it? Is it perhaps the arcanum of happiness? Given that it is the supreme arcanum of a power that strikes terror into those who merely glimpse it? But this dynamic will shift when time, the great harbinger of new realities, designates the hour at which a matured humanity shall harness this discovery. Should humanity violate the law while sated with blessings, an epoch of history will culminate in one of those cosmic cataclysms from which a successor humanity will emerge to expiate the transgression through a new original sin. Alternatively, the earth may splinter in the void, and its souls, reduced to embryonic dust, will be drawn toward new existences in distant spheres. Does not every race, regardless of its hue, descend from prior humanities that have lived and completed their cycle? Extinguished, perhaps, in collective self-destruction for having transgressed the law of equilibrium, upon which inexorably rests the phallic divinity of eternity. I speak like a mystical John the Baptist at the banquets of Herod. Yet these are merely theories, devoid of maledictions and free from the Hebraic portents of apocalypse. Drink deeply of water to avert the intoxication of mysticism. The study of the latent faculties within the human being breeds madness, hubris, and intellectual egocentrism. Consider the illusions that lurk at every turn for those who deem themselves exceptional or lay claim to divinity. Remain modest and humble without self-abasement, maintaining a Pythagorean spirit in both your research and your social conduct. I invite you to the compelling study of the extraordinary. Indeed, to study is to meditate and to labor, to interpret and to verify. It is not to indulge in reverie. For within the imagination lies the peril of fancy, of obsession, and of animality. Study the few genuine classics of alchemy. Meditate. Alchemy and magic, two domains that have fallen into disrepute. Yet it is the terms themselves that suffer ignominy, rather than the subjects whose doctrines and practices they encompass. The truths one may attain are profound problems, worthy of the attention of highly evolved intellects that are entirely liberated from the deeply ingrained prejudices of profane academies. The alchemists have posited a problem that orthodox universities have yet to resolve. The masters of the alchemical tradition remain in the shadows, so that the grace with which they occasionally announce their mysterious preparations might inspire the emergence of a superior individual, one capable of adapting this mystery for the common good and the reformation of the existing order. Peruse these texts with patience. Discern the philological significance of certain terms, appreciate the assonances in others, and recognize the simple analogies in still others. Do not forget that within the most inconspicuous passages, hidden amidst examples drawn from old wives' tales, a master of the art may have presented you with the completed formula. Remember, too, that preceding the grand arcanum of the Magi lies the lesser natural arcanum, a key so simple that even a servant might readily employ it. Patient and humble men of goodwill shall find the path. Thereupon they shall discover the key. To this end, this volume, disregarded by the vast majority of academic graduates, will serve as a valuable introduction. I composed it with profound enthusiasm, knowing that I was sowing a seed destined to bear fruit. I anticipated a swift harvest, yet it shall come to pass only in due time, when a more worthy successor than I takes up the mantle. I authored it also out of a desire to attempt an immediate application to human medicine. By medicine, I mean the art of healing, of curing, and of alleviating human suffering, medicine in its truest therapeutic sense. Throughout the 20 years separating the first and second editions of this work, I endeavored to establish a selfless philanthropic organization capable of conducting a collective experiment. Yet I have not achieved the success that I foresee in the future. Flying machines were not perfected in an instant. The obstacles are formidable, chief among them being the education of the populace. The a priori skepticism of physicians, the derision of high-ranking state officials eager to subordinate all things to the established bureaucratic apparatus, and the religious bad faith of dogmatic believers, all constitute impediments that cannot be dismantled in a day. That which the majority claim a desire to witness is a miracle. Yet, even when such a miracle unfolds directly before their eyes, they refuse to acknowledge it. This is because they desire to perceive it in the manner that they themselves and religious fables have conceptualized it, as resembling the theatrical effects of certain ballets. Nonetheless, much has already been accomplished, albeit with minimal effort, against the myriad obstacles arrayed before innovation, and despite external endeavors to fashion a normal, peaceful existence. The sciences of the human spirit dissect the tangled subdivisions of the numerous branches of the science of physical man. Biology and physiology occupy the vanguard. Psychical experimentation is integral to this advance. Yet, the problem addressed by the science of magic, and the mystery that is alchemy, remains a secret that reforms and transforms an entire civilization, or a prospective historical civilization that currently renders us subservient to the corollaries of verbose philosophies. It is a revolutionary arcanum, one that inspires trepidation to approach, for its application and adaptation would subvert all those established doctrines upon which modern society is founded. Nevertheless, the primary and perhaps the sole experimental application feasible within modern society is occult therapeutics, toward which I have directed several esteemed friends who have followed me. These experiments are practicable and within the reach of all, including medical practitioners and those possessing a rudimentary knowledge of human anatomy. By studying the principles whose elements I have delineated, they may attempt the trial. Tempt, yet do so in silence. Otherwise, you will be queried, as was I, whether you are purveying imaginary powers. For those who do not reflect do not deny you or me the occult powers of a superior therapeutics. Yet, while they deny this possibility to the human being, they attribute such powers with admirable solemnity to a centuries-old image painted upon a crumbling wall, or to a worthless effigy carved from the trunk of a barren tree, failing to consider that the miracles ascribed to these images are in truth the miracles of humanity and of the adoring masses. I have frequently been informed in response that faith is the grand patrimony of the religious spirit, capable of accomplishing all things. That is a misconception. Mysticism is a pernicious legacy. Its categories are manifold, and it proliferates everywhere like a weed. Indeed, a form of mysticism is intertwined with every aspect of human life, even within the domestic sphere, beside the hearth or within the daily broth. A man who can declare himself untainted by this influence is a divinity among the most perfect of mortals. Magic is divine in this sense, for it elevates the adept beyond any form of mysticism, establishing him as the center of a magnetic field of love, the radiance of which eradicates evil, annihilates grief, and dispels suffering. Upon the emergence of this focusing center, the therapist is conceived. It is the radiance of love that heals, a panacea that cannot be purchased in any apothecary nor manufactured or distilled within any industrial laboratory. Notwithstanding this, your music remains a forbidden melody amidst the discordance of diverse songs. Human society will remain unaltered until the advent of Christ the King in the manner of Solomon, when love shall possess its own statues and receive offerings, as was customary in ancient temples. For the ancients were the first to emerge following the cataclysms of an epoch when civilizations reached their zenith and were subsequently destroyed for having violated their own wisdom. Therefore, I have desired to attempt a therapeutic experiment, and I invite the disciples of the art to emulate the modest example I have set, devoid of any mystical dogma. This novel experiment will instruct far more than 1,000 volumes ever could. Do not resolve to summon 10 renowned scientists in order to restore life to a man 3 days deceased and putrefying from organic decomposition. Do not impede a sick individual from seeking treatment from his physician, nor from expending his modest resources on remedies. Deem it your objective to heal those who appeal to you, without even desiring that they should know your agency, and still less expecting their gratitude. Love them, and possess the wisdom not to yearn for the impossible. Console them with a word, and through your love, awaken within them that compensatory force which, in human nature, acts as the restorer of vital equilibrium. A patient lacking the equilibrium of physical law, affected by variables indeterminable by ordinary chemistry, may, with no other remedy than the imponderable magnetism emanating from us, recover. Indeed, such a patient is frequently compelled to recover by the law of physical and psychical compensation, thereby working the miracle himself. You shall verify this 1,000 times over, free from pride and desire. Let that suffice. Let the healing physician receive gratitude, and let the chemist sell his toxins. This is of no concern to you. Continue to study and meditate without belief, that is, beyond the faith in those matters maintained by the rest of the world. The Miriam of therapeutists is a wave of love, emanating from a pulsating center of an unknown nature, whether from a single man or from a chain of souls. Though this allegory may sound mystical, it bears a feminine name, she who was the first and highest of the Magi, a vessel and profound treasury of love, because, lest you be scandalized by the truth I am about to impart, love is matter, akin to heat, magnetism, light, electricity, and radioactivity. More potent than all these manifestations of matter in motion, the element of love serves as the essential condition of movement toward the enigma of creation and destruction, which the mystical populace foolishly personifies as a spirit, and even more foolishly depicts as a man. The enigma is a law. Aspire toward its comprehension. In all your endeavors, ever perform good. To do good is to love. Love across the wondrous span of the spheres, far beyond the perception of matter that corrupts and transforms. From distant worlds, recall souls and the generative influences of the astral current, the great serpent of the Jewish Kabbalists. From the beloved soul, exorcise every cause of corruption by dissolving the negative elements that would alter it. Reflect that any nature in equilibrium, any animal organism, from the most minuscule to the most advanced, tends toward demise because it is born with the instinct for perpetual transformation through the law of love. Love and death are the twin agents of life. By loving, you shall forestall the agony of death, beyond which the unloved soul experiences the sensual delight of regeneration through love. Dante reiterates this in cryptic terms throughout his work, and Leopardi sang of it as though enveloped in an aura of ecstasy and desire. You will soon comprehend the secret of the regenerative Miriam, as soon as you acquire the capacity to love. Only then will you be capable of discerning whether I have composed this volume inspired by the highest affection for its readers, without prejudging me, and with the deepest gratitude to those who, having read it, become benevolent, selflessly dedicated solely to the cause of good, which, in the future, shall unite individuals, peoples, and nations in fraternity, rendering the earth a sanctuary of love and peace. Giuliano Kremmerz. Part 1. Introduction to the Science of the Occult. Science is for those who conquer it. What necessity exists today for the occult? For in the present age, that which lurks within the shadows is formidable. Criminality, falsehood, and deceit. That which we recognize as science does not conceal itself within a temple, proclaiming a dread of the light. The acquisition of every new truth resembles a tributary that swells the ocean of achievements contributing to human well-being. Should you possess knowledge unknown to others, publish a treatise and elucidate your findings. Consequently, I have resolved to write in order to make myself understood, and to instruct so as to facilitate the success of others. I shall speak and write with utmost clarity. Regarding yourself, in order to comprehend me aright, you must perform with scrupulous fidelity only that which is requisite for your success and which will enable you to perceive clearly all that I write. You should speak with the utmost economy, refrain from disputing any particular phenomenon, and avoid declaring, as do the ignorant, I have not witnessed it, therefore it cannot be true. One must apply oneself to study, observe silence, and wait. It is necessary to comprehend matters thoroughly and to conduct experiments with the greatest circumspection. Should the experiment fail, do not assert that the master is demented. Simply acknowledge that you have failed to understand and renew your endeavors. Science constitutes the sustenance of every man. Indeed, it has been democratized to such a degree that even children are made chemists. Yet, individuals of sound judgment recognize that, hitherto, neither integral nor infinitesimal calculus has attained popular currency. And since the supreme reason of occult science is the algebra of elementary philosophy, the sublime mathematics applied to the reality of existential phenomena, I shall not be deemed culpable of obscurantism if minds unaccustomed to such calculations fail to grasp these abstractions instantaneously. For my part, regarding those matters permitted by nature, I shall remain grounded, so that those with the least experience may easily comprehend. Yet, as I must also delineate the path for those of greater vision, those permitted to behold more elevated realms, I offer my apologies if I employ concepts that transcend the purview of myopic birdwatchers. This volume is composed for the multitude desirous of preparing themselves, and for the select few capable of fully assimilating its contents. Science is offered to all, yet it is fully possessed only by him who conquers it. Magic, the magician, and the incommunicable secret. Do you possess a clear conception of magic and of the magician? Magic is absolute wisdom, signifying the synthesis of all that is, all that has been, and all that shall be. It is a term that encompasses every attribute of divine omnipotence, if by the deity one signifies the supreme intelligence that creates, regulates, and sustains the universe. Magic, as an ideally perfect science, is both applicable and practicable. In religion, in politics, in families, in man. The magician is he who possesses the science of God, serves as its living repository, and actively employs it. This science is of such potency that it divests those who have mastered the divine secret of any desire to speak of it. Indeed, those who have attained this ultimate objective have striven to write the truth only in a manner that remains virtually incomprehensible, even to those endowed with a degree of intuitive understanding. Consider, indeed, that the priests of antiquity imparted this science within their temples to those who, through protracted and formidable trials, proved themselves worthy of learning and practicing it. It was bestowed progressively, through rites and ceremonies that the Catholic Church has preserved within its holy orders. Hence, one may deduce that those who instructed others in this formidable science, fully cognizant of its gravity, sought qualities that the ordinary man does not possess. Imagine for a moment that your children were to request a loaded pistol, mistaking it for a toy. Could you deliver so perilous an instrument into their hands without neglecting the duties of a father to his offspring, and of a man to humanity? You would entrust a weapon to your children only on the day you are certain they will employ it to preserve their lives, rather than to harm you or themselves. The master guided the education of the uninitiated to its culmination, gradually leading the neophyte toward the priesthood. The highest priest was the adept, he who had attained the supreme wisdom, the magician. Christ encapsulated the entirety of magical preparation in the injunctions. Love your neighbor as yourself, and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Those who practice these two precepts with sincerity and are capable of maintaining discretion are prepared to begin. Perfect rectitude of heart, a clear conception of the good, an absolute aversion to the creation of evil, a profound love for one's fellow man, a conscience untarnished by any stain, no desire save for the well-being of others, and no fear of the adversity that may befall you while performing good works. It is in this manner that the magician resembles the saint, proving worthy of that supreme conception of the good which is God. Eliphaz Levi wrote, "There is a profound secret, the disclosure of which has already destroyed a world, as is demonstrated by the religious traditions of Egypt, summarized symbolically by Moses at the commencement of Genesis. This secret constitutes the science of good and evil, and its revelation inevitably results in death. Moses symbolizes it as a tree situated at the center of the earthly paradise, adjacent to and intertwined with the tree of life, which is guarded by the flaming sword and the fourfold forms of the biblical Sphinx, the cherub of Ezekiel. Yes, there exists a unique, universal, and sempiternal dogma, as robust as supreme reason, as simple as all that is grand, as intelligible as all that is universal and absolutely true, and this dogma was the progenitor of all others. Yes, there exists a science that confers powers that appear superhuman. Now, if this formidable secret exists, is it not to a saint that it should be entrusted? The universe and man in the occult doctrine. To comprehend thoroughly and clearly all that has been written concerning the occult sciences, magic, and kindred subjects, one must understand that which constitutes the foundation of both the theory and practice of magic. In magic, the conception of the universe is the synthesis of all existence. All that exists is a unity, a synthesis of three essential elements: matter, life, and energy. This grand synthesis is entirely analogous in its constituent parts. Should you ascend a mountain where no blade of grass is to be found, and where no birds sing, do you imagine yourself to be solitary? You, the stones, the air you breathe, and the stars above are all unified within a single universe. Take your own human reason, expand it into the reason of the world, and you will acquire a comprehension of that universal reason. Your soul is the soul of the world. From this conception, astrology was born, the word of the stars. Hermes declares in his Smaragdine tablet that all that is above is like all that is below, and that to comprehend this suffices to accomplish the miracle of the one thing. Study man, and you shall know the universe. Study the universe, and you shall know man. From the universe, descend to man and apply to him the laws of the cosmos. From man, ascend to the universe and discover its occult laws. Man possesses a soul, thought, direction, and purpose. So too does the universe. The universe exhibits motion, respiration, evolution, and cyclic return. So too does man. All things are analogous, and the magical process par excellence is analogy. Even the sacred symbol, which men attempt to explain through resemblances, is analogical. So likewise are the laws governing miracles and magical procedures, and the study of analogy leads inexorably to the knowledge of magic, which is the wisdom of Solomon. The vital stream is singular and unified. The process of evolution and involution of action within universal life remains constant. This force, or vital current, transforms itself according to the medium it nourishes and animates, thereby acquiring a new form. Pappus wrote, "Everything is analogical. The law that governs the world also governs the life of an insect." To study the manner in which cells aggregate to form an organ is to study the way in which the kingdoms of nature assemble to form the earth, which is itself an organ of our universe. It is likewise the method of studying how men unite to form a family, an organ of humanity. To study the construction of an apparatus through its constituent parts is analogous to learning of the formation of a world from planets, and of a nation from families, or, furthermore, to learning of the constitution of the universe starting from individual worlds, and of mankind from nations. Everything is analogous. To know the secret of the cell is to know the secret of God. The Absolute is omnipresent. The whole remains indivisible, both in its entirety and in its constituent parts. From the foregoing, it is evident that the definition of life, which at first glance appears simple, is far more comprehensive than is commonly supposed. For humanity, life is the organ-regenerating force carried by the blood corpuscles. Yet this is merely human life, not life in its absolute sense. In truth, this force is but a modification of the atmosphere which encompasses the vitality of all terrestrial beings. If one wishes, in accordance with the majority of contemporary scientists, to locate the origin of life within the Earth's atmosphere, one may pause at this juncture. Yet the terrestrial atmosphere, like human blood, derives its vitalizing principles from on high, from the sun itself. We are thus led back to the infinite. However, since our general scientific knowledge is restricted to our own world, we cannot proceed further. Consequently, as we recognize that the force of the blood is derived from the air, the force of the air from the earth, and the terrestrial force from the sun, we may affirm that life is transformed solar energy. From my preceding remarks, the analogical comprehension of all mutable phenomena within universal life becomes manifest. Let us now direct our attention to man, who is of particular interest to us. To some, man is mere matter. To others, he is a composite of matter and spirit. In the science of the Magi, he is the reflection of the life of the universe, and is therefore tripartite in his constitution: body, plastic mediator or astral body, and soul. The astral body can consciously project itself beyond the physical vessel, as is the case with adepts or perfected initiates, or it may depart unconsciously, thereby subjecting itself to the fortuitous influences of the moment, as occurs with any ordinary medium. Upon the dissolution or destruction of the physical body, the astral form takes flight, and man dies. Should a man project his astral body upon that of another, he magnetizes him. Since my purpose is to establish the foundations of occult doctrine to ensure a clear understanding of all that I shall hereafter select and publish, I will not here enter into an analytical examination of the elements that constitute man in the formation of his astral body. Spiritualism. When I initially presented to the public as a prolegomenon to our subsequent publications, the new materials, definitions, and doctrines concerning the occult sciences, it was by no means my intention to compose a work of spiritualist propaganda. Quite the contrary. My aim was to offer a comprehensive, encyclopedic overview of the mystery as it is understood in the Hermetic art, as the pinnacle of human and divine wisdom, and the key to the occult temple of nature, wherein man approaches closest to the divine, both in his conception and in his realization. Modern history will commence when a new chemistry analyzes the constituents of the soul that compose the individual and causes them to unfold. This will mark the end of a protracted era of darkness in which man has remained ignorant of his own nature. The occult sciences encompass spiritualism, animal magnetism, and theurgy, although spiritualism is the sole domain, alongside animal magnetism, that attracts those who recognize neither wisdom nor truth beyond the narrow confines of their own understanding and authority. A French educator, Rivail, writing under the pseudonym of Allan Kardec, provided the first major impetus to the popularization of spiritualism, which, through successful dissemination, spread wherever there were individuals desiring to commune with the souls of the deceased, or curious onlookers who delighted in witnessing the movement of a table. One might say that magic, a formidable, terrifying, and suspect word, had been virtually forgotten in the wake of this fashionable success, which does not alarm timid consciences as intensely as does the mother of all human wisdom. Spiritualism has enjoyed fortune and success because it is more suited to the common level of intellect and closer to the dogma of the Catholic Church militant, owing to its idealistic conception of the soul, of the spirits of the departed, and of the guardian angel. Spiritualism teaches that man is composed of three distinct parts: the physical body, the spirit, the perispirit, which serves as the link between body and spirit. This perispirit accompanies the human spirit after the demise of the physical body. The spirit, or human soul, aspires toward perpetual refinement through successive reincarnations. Between successive incarnations, souls reside in interplanetary space and are capable of communicating with the living. A medium is the individual who serves as an intermediary between the spirit of the deceased, not yet reincarnated, and the living. Through the agency of mediums, spirits can produce phenomena of every description: mental, sensory, and physical. In short, the medium is a being who, by virtue of a privileged constitution, is selected by the spirits as a vessel for their manifestations. Adherents of Kardec's spiritualism classify mediums according to their inherent disposition and the quality of their manifestations. Without delving deeply into the theory of spiritualism, it would be folly to deny spiritualistic phenomena or those arising from spiritualistic practices. Assuredly, even the most adept in academic debate, and those most skeptical of certain physical and sensory phenomena, have been unable to refute or deny them entirely. Nevertheless, suspicions of fraud, deceit, and bad faith dictate that this doctrine be returned to the domain of strictly scientific and irrefutable experimentation. Official science, in its progress, routinely discards obsolete designations for these forces and phenomena, replacing them with modern nomenclature. The actinic force postulated by Professor Thury of Geneva is but a mode of existence and perception of the astral or fluidic body of the occultists, analogous to the psychic force proposed by Cox. Thus, I intended to speak of animal magnetism, following my previous efforts to direct the attention of investigators. Do you want access to this and all the complete audiobooks on the channel, plus the ebook version? Click the link in the description or scan the QR code in the left corner of the screen to access our library, where you can listen to your favorite esoteric books without ad interruptions, lock your screen, or use other apps while the narration plays, and even download the ebook version to follow along as you listen. Listen on your computer via web browser, or download the app from the Play Store. After subscribing, you will receive an email with your login details, password, and step-by-step instructions on how to access the books through the Hotmart app.